All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to our July series of How Do We Go Forward, How Do We Go Back? Conversations about returning to academia in the fall. Today, I am so thrilled to have with us Molly Faulkner and Julia Gleich, who are going to be talking about institutional exhaustion. Julia Gleich is a Brooklyn-based contemporary ballet choreographer and teacher with over 25 years of experience in higher education dance, starting in the USA at the University of Utah and Manhattanville College, then 15 years in the UK at Trinity Laban Conservatoire of Music and Dance, and London Studio Center as head of choreography. Molly Faulkner is starting her 19th year as a professor of dance at Palomar College in San Marcos, California. She teaches all levels of ballet, choreography, teaching methods, and other core curriculum dance courses, as well as directing the Palomar College Contemporary Dance Ensemble. Julia and Molly, how are you doing?
Well, I think. Molly, you maybe not so much.
It's a loaded question at this point. Doing, luckily, COVID free, in a safe place to quarantine. Still have my job. Very grateful for that. So I'm doing okay.
And so Molly's in California and I'm in Brooklyn, and we're doing well, fine, absolutely no problem, except for the fact that the teaching that I was doing, I have not taught a class since March 6th, I think. And partly because I don't depend on it for my primary source of income now, so I kind of thought I'll just step back a little bit. I teach at Peridance. But that's okay. So I don't know. Shall we launch Molly and I? So Molly and I got together, as we do, and we created our Kibble File, which is all about us talking about issues that come up around institutional fatigue. I will mention that we both have very different trajectories, and well, very maybe not so much, but different. And we looked at this from a variety of perspectives, but also there was this sort of COVID overtone, but it wasn't in everything we were talking about. And I think that it's maybe important to mention that, you know, everything that we were talking about isn't about COVID. And then we would add something to it, or Molly would usually bring something up that then added another layer. But we were thinking about, so I don't know, Molly, I'm just launching then, I'm going.
You want to explain a little bit about our different trajectories? Put it in a little bit of context.
So, so my background is that I started in dance. I danced in New York. I was very fortunate to be dancing ballet in New York when it was really the dance capital of the world in the late 70s and into the and anyway, I went from there to a mathematics degree, then to arts administration, then back to dance to get my MFA because I really wanted to be, it's really what I wanted to be doing. You just couldn't drag me out of the studio. And from there, stayed primarily in institutional environment, went back to New York, ran my company for a while, and then got back into an institution again. And then into London at two higher education institutions until after 15 years, I said bye-bye, and now I'm here. So that's the background. I am speaking from the perspective of institutional fatigue as the person who made the decision to go, done. Molly?
Grew up doing ballet. All I ever wanted to do was be a ballet dancer, and then got my education, undergrad, master's, doctorate, got a job, a couple jobs actually. I was lucky to go back to back tenure jobs, and then landed in Southern California at a community college. And I've been here starting my 19th year. So I've been, and I will say that I have 7 years to retirement. Seven, only seven. So that's.
Congratulations.
I cringe.
Thank you. So I'm riding it out to retirement. So this will have been my principal career.
And this makes me very uncomfortable because I think, what have I done wrong? Why am I not in that position that I'm going to retire? I don't know. I never told you that, Molly.
Oh, I know, and I think of what you've done and saying, my God, why haven't I done that? Why haven't I just freaking bailed on the whole system and just done whatever else? So, I think it's the grass is always greener a little bit.
Sure. Well, we then, so we wanted to make sure that people knew we had these different perspectives. And then I guess, Molly, you mentioned that it starts in undergrad, and you kind of wanted to talk about the process of going through higher education and this idea. Well, go ahead, take it away.
Yeah, I think that in thinking about institutional fatigue, I'm like, where does it start? And I honestly, I went back to my undergrad, and I went back to working with some amazing people, and I'm thinking about what was so exhausting about that, and how did my undergrad experience color my professorship? And I think that in our previous, and Julian, because it's going to bounce all over the place, isn't it? In our presentation last week, Julie and I presented at the Corps de Ballet Conference on the nature of integrity. And we introduced, but really didn't explain, a concept of burden sharing. And that's where, as a professor, we try and be as transparent as possible with our students. And I think that that's something that the arts do very well. And that really, is that so good for an undergrad? And the reason I say that is because I think I developed my fundamental mistrust of administration. I think it started in my undergrad, because I think that my professors would say off-the-hand comments like, make sure everyone gets signed up for this class. It's on the chopping block. The district is looking to cut this class. So anytime there was an unpopular decision that was out of the faculty control, they brought in the administration as this kind of nebulous cloud of something that's following faculty that makes unpopular decisions. So that was that, and it changes, I think, in the master's degree, and then in the doctorate. I think there's levels of all of this burden sharing, and I think it really does. If you decide to make a career in academia, I think it does color the way you negotiate. I
found this fascinating because, we think about transparency and how important, transparency is the number one thing. And it is a curious double-edged sword with huge unintended consequences. We even talked about the burden sharing of our leadership. So in my case, it would have been the dean or the director. I actually can't remember what the title was, but anyway. He would come at the beginning of the year, all the faculty gets together, and they have this big, let's have coffee and reunite. And you're thinking, what are we going to teach? And I want to get in there. And he stands up, in this case it was a he, and says, yeah, money's really tight, and I don't know, we will make it through this year, but there are going to have to be cuts. And you could predict every year that it was going to be like this. I stopped going after that 6 years, because I thought, I don't need to be beaten down before I've even begun. But this was a kind of burden sharing. Molly, you had some.
Oh, well, first of all, we call it plenary, and that's the day or the 2 days before the semester starts. We all get together. We have a series of workshops and professional development and talk about the state of the college and all of that. And I've been there 19 years. I've done this thing 19 times. And we finally made a drinking game out of when the president stands up and says, this year is going to be hard. Next year is going to be really difficult, and there's going to be some challenges. And that third year, we just don't know if if everyone's going to be able to keep their job. We literally, at that point, our coffee, when that in whatever version that happened for 19 years, we'd lift our coffee cups and huzzah! Because I think that, but is this supposed to push us to want to do better for our students by making us fear for our jobs based on information and things that we can't control? So that kind of burden sharing really did. It brought every year it just brings this beautiful beginning of school energy to a screeching freaking halt, and everybody starts getting into their silos trying to protect what's theirs.
Without sufficient knowledge, really. I mean, most of the time these are just vague fears, right? You don't have numbers. I mean, maybe you do, Molly, I don't know. But most of the time, it wasn't numbers. I wasn't looking at anything that I could solve myself. It was just a warning that it was going to come down from on high. And so you can't respond to it. All you can do is feel nervousness and trepidation. So then, yeah, do you pass that down to the students? And if,
I mean, I know how it makes me feel as an adult, having been in the field. Imagine a Ballet 1 class walking in and burden sharing to the degree. I mean, what would that do to them wanting to pursue it either as, even further than just Ballet 1? So again, I don't know if it's good. I don't know if it's bad. I just think it's a thing. And I think we need to look at it.
Do you think that it's unique to dance because there's so much interactivity, and that, I mean, not unique, but maybe more pronounced? For example, our main problem at Laban was that the classes were getting bigger and bigger. They were admitting more and more students. I hear that's still going on. And the students were conscious of this, but I don't know how conscious, I mean, they see more numbers, but are they hugely upset by it and distracted by it, or is it just a fact? And so if you highlight the fact that it's not the ideal number of students to teach, are you just creating an opportunity for everyone to fail, to just not do as well? I don't know.
What's so interesting in this that dance in academia is it's the bastard art. It doesn't have the rich history that music does. Even in the performing arts, it doesn't have the literary quality of theater. You can't point to a script and say, this is what the students are going to do. It is so corporeal that I think that there is a misunderstanding of the academic nature of it. And we talked a lot, Julia, about the justification, the exhausting process of justifying what it is that you do, to people that just don't understand the scholarly nature of embodiment. And I think that when we're told that it's going to get difficult or that there are financial challenges, the arts are always on the chopping block. Anybody, we all know that. We all know that we're the first line of, if you want to cut the legs out from something, you cut the arts, you cut the voice. If you speak up too much, you're going to get cut. If you don't speak up enough, you don't have enough visibility, you're going to get cut. So I think there is, so yes, unique. I don't think the burden sharing is unique, but I think that dance is in this, yeah, it's predominantly women, and it's considered a soft discipline.
But one could argue that, I mean, I can't tell you how many lectures. I have a degree in mathematics, so, I've run the gamut here. I don't ever really remember much burden sharing in my mathematics degree. There's 50 people in a lecture, or 25. It was a dog-eat-dog kind of situation. If you can get time with the professor, you're lucky. But I just don't ever remember. I mean, maybe it's a particular nerdly kind of environment to be in, and they just talk about numbers or concepts.
Well, I don't think math has ever felt threatened to be dismissed from the academy. I mean, you're a mathematician, your college classes are always going to be there. You know that they are going to be offered every semester. You know that your major will be intact. You know that if someone, so there's no,
so you're not thinking of it as a slippery slope, but
there's no job insecurity with the faculty, perceived or real. Because every time I say, I'm so afraid that they're going to cut the dance program, I'm tenured. So the only way they can get rid of me is if they cut the program. Well, there's only 2 of us as full-time faculty in the program. It's not a hard thing to cut. So even tenure doesn't protect me. I don't think math professors are really worried that the entire math program is going to get cut due to an economic downturn.
I have some people I can ask.
Call them up, man. Phone in a lifeline.
So that was the defense of the, So the the defense of the department. We talked also about the fundamental distrust in admin, but that kind of comes out of like committee work. And Molly, you talked about the committee of committees.
Oh, yeah, the let's pile on to the exhaustion is that, not only are you justifying for your own program, but you have the institutional service work that you have to do, and you're sitting on all of these committees, and then one of the functions of the committees is that everyone's on the same page. So if you're on multiple committees, you spend the first 20 minutes of any meeting hearing exactly what's been said at every other meeting. It's like, freaking send an email, let's get to the meat. But it is so, we really, honestly, I think making a campus-wide, drinking game, even if it's only coffee, that every time you hear information more than 3 times at a meeting, you're like, thank you. But it is exhausting and it takes a lot of time. And I get that some people are only in one meeting, so they need to hear this and whatever. But it is, if you do a lot of institutional service, it is exhausting. Because you also hear the same dire speech of, it's going to be hard this year, it's going to be even harder next year, and the third year, we're lucky if we can keep our freaking doors open.
Well, and of course, we all know that meetings are not a very productive way to get work done. So there's factual research, there's research on this topic. But one of the things that we were doing is looking at differences. I'm going to read my list of institutional things about institutional fatigue. I said that I never felt like I was fighting for my program very much, but I think that that's the nature of being in a conservatoire. I was into conservatoire settings, so maybe my little corner needed some protection, but the whole thing wasn't going to go away unless every single person that I was working with went away. It would have been, maybe I would have had to fight for the question of what I taught, whether it was choreography or ballet or Laban, which I sometimes described as the icing on the cake. Though at one of my institutions, I was teaching the MA students, and one year when I was told I couldn't teach them anymore because that was someone else's professional development, they needed that opportunity, which again, I thought I was already qualified. I thought everybody there was qualified to do their job. If I was fighting, it was maybe overload because my classes were huge. But I always felt like I had a lot of freedom, and I think that's because I was considered fractional. So I could really step away, even though I was barely fractional at one of my institutions. So I did learn how to sort of do the job and go home in one institution, and the other one I was very committed and initiated new programs. So we had this question about fatigue and investment. Is your fatigue directly proportional to your investment? And Molly, that came up because you were talking about the 3-year.
Oh, right. I was told as a brand new faculty, you have 3 good years to make your voice heard and to make whatever changes you want, and then people can't hear you. You can complain, you can do whatever you want your first 3 years. After that, you've been here long enough that no one is going to take you seriously. And that was, I'm trying to find our notes on that in our Kibble File. And I was thinking that, brand new faculty, man, they want tenure. So there is going to be a huge investment in time, in energy, in service work, in full-time, this is just the full-time experience, to build up enough accomplishments to be considered for tenure. So I think that's part of the 3-year mark. I think that you just kind of dive in and you get involved in everything that you can, and you kind of figure out where your institutional service can do the most good. But
that's interesting, because in the UK you don't have that same kind of situation, because you don't get tenure and then just sit back, because it's more difficult to fire people there. But I'd be curious if the 3-year idea applies in the UK. Ben's nodding, but I don't know.
Well, I mean, here, and this is, a worst case scenario of tenure and losing your job, which is why I say that I know I'm not, I do my work, I do it well. I'm not going to get fired. They're just going to take my program away. But we had a professor who actually was selling drugs to students, and he did not get fired because he was selling drugs and committed the felony. He got fired because while he was in prison, he couldn't actually fulfill the obligation of teaching his classes. So tenure, math professors who screw up, they're not going to cut the math program. So okay, but dance teachers, one of two full-time faculty makes a mistake, it makes it very easy to look at these small programs, and I think there is an inequity in smaller programs.
So,
Just fundamentally.
I mean, I've always had an issue with the idea of tenure. I am not a fan. Middlebury College got rid of their tenure. Oh no, was it Middlebury or Bennington? I think it was Bennington. And they let everybody go and they started afresh. And one of their arguments was that they wanted practicing artists teaching in their art programs anyway. And this was how they were going to achieve that, was by making sure that they had an influx of new people and they got rid of tenure altogether. I mean, it would be interesting to talk to them about it. I can't vouch for how it works.
Well, I mean, historically, tenure was, and if I'm wrong, I'm sorry, but this is how I understand how tenure got into it, was that you had a predominantly liberal faculty and you had a predominantly conservative administration. And in the 1960s, there was this clash between that and so academic freedom. If you exercised academic freedom, then all of a sudden you could get fired because you had a differing viewpoint from somebody in administration. And so the tenure process, that's the genesis of the tenure process. Do I think it's still, everyone points to the one bad faculty like I did, the one bad faculty, but how many jobs does it actually save? How many people don't get fired for differences of opinions with their administrators because they have tenure? And I don't know that we have that data.
And one could argue right now it's flipped. I mean, the faculty is predominantly liberal, and one might think that the administration is, but I think the weight now is much more on the university faculty in terms of political views, but that's a whole other.
Oh yeah, because I mean, look at the rhetoric that's going on. We are apparently so organized in the way we deliver our material that we're indoctrinating students to a liberal agenda. I'm like, oh, are you kidding me? We can't get along long enough to indoctrinate people and to agree on stuff. Let's get real. If we have a liberal,
I'm going to hold on that thought for a second because in the interest of free speech and controlling our time, I just want to tell you, you've got like 5 more minutes before we start taking questions. So perhaps if you, both of you, if you've got final thoughts that you want to end on and round us up with.
Well, we kind of went to the, I asked Molly why she got her PhD. And then I kind of went to, well, what's the value in the dance degree anyway? And what do you get for sticking with it? And what do you get for stepping away from the institution? So I'll do my thing really quickly. I mean, I stepped away because I felt like somebody else needed to be teaching people for a while. And that if I teach and teach and teach and teach and teach and I don't do the profession, it didn't work for me. I don't know. It rubbed me a little wrong. And
tell them the quality assurance story.
So, and the final straw for me was when the Quality Assurance Agency in the UK came in for one of our meetings to address our year-end wrap-up and their evaluation. And we went into a classroom and the desks are put into sort of a U shape, and the quality assurance people are standing at the front. We file in, I start to sit down, somebody hits me and they say, don't sit down. And why not? And then I sort of look around, everybody's standing. We had to wait for the quality assurance people, who, by the way, are just lecturers at other institutions who happen to do this job. We had to wait for them to sit down, and then they invited us to sit down. And for me, that was like the dog, the tail wagging the dog. I just thought, this is crazy. And I don't really enjoy it. And I'm not sure that it makes the education any better. But I stepped away because I had other opportunities, and I thought I can't do anything for very long, apparently. I keep zigzagging, so.
Well, and that brought up this arbitrary sense of hierarchy. I mean, I think that there is a truly arbitrary sense of hierarchy in academia. And you brought up, I don't know who to attribute the quote to, but when stakes are low, people get mean. And I think that we see a lot of this. I happen to be in a very functional program. You know, there are times we don't get along and whatever, but for the most part, we have the program, the students in our best interests. There are some programs that simply don't, and the infighting is so awful, and you hear about it and you're like, how do they treat their colleagues this way? The stakes are low. So do you know who to attribute that quote to, Julia?
Well, Jan Handvik, one of my administration jobs, he now runs at Mexico City, runs a theater in Mexico City. But yeah, he said that because he said that the nonprofit world is so dog it's so bad. And it's because, you know, you're fighting over $2,000 and you feel like you're in steep competition with these other small organizations, and there's no way to justify why you receive or don't receive what you're fighting for.
And then you brought up the one thing when we talked right before, you brought up the idea of the advocating. Another thing that's exhausting but completely worth it is the advocating for students, is that you find that, you know, students will come to you with inequities that are happening on campus, whether they be front door issues or anything, and all of a sudden you find that, you know, for us, our counselors are constantly telling our students not to take certain classes that we know they need to be successful. So we're constantly overriding and telling the student and advocating for the students for what we know they need to be successful, or to help them negotiate, you know, an environment, especially for me in community college, that may be unfamiliar. You know, they may be a first generation college student that just doesn't understand how things work. So anyway, you were talking about that, Julia.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm actually going to put in a little plug, and I'm going to firstly thank Molly and Julia. Like, that was, you're so prepared. We got through so much. It was like, this is fantastic, but also just everything you said, it's really useful. And I think I would love you to go on, but what I am going to do is I'm going to put in a little plug for next week and invite folks to come back, because next week we're talking to undergrads. Like, we're having undergrads who are coming in and talking about their experiences and what they need. And I think we have to listen to them in this moment. What I'm also going to invite everyone to do is come back, unmute yourselves, start your videos, say hello, and we'll take questions for Julia and Molly. And while everyone is getting their text sorted out, I would like to jump in with one as a starter question. So if you take a moment and you imagine yourself as no longer institutionally exhausted, if the things that are making you exhausted are removed from you, what does that change about how you teach and make art?
Oh, see, I laughingly say that teaching is the least amount of time I spend is on teaching. I spend so much more time as a full-time faculty in institutional work and in the justification process, in keeping the program going, in fighting for and being a student advocate and a curriculum advocate. So how beautiful would it be if those pressures, I think I would be a much less stressed out teacher. I don't know that my fundamental approach would change, but I just think I might be a little happier.
I think I spent a lot of time pushing that stuff aside, and trying to pretend that I had the ideal environment. And this was this proportionate, the investment, and if your fatigue is proportional to your investment. And at one of my institutions, in some ways, it's more fatiguing because I was trying to create an environment where I wasn't part of the institution. Like I was just going in and doing my job and going home. And I'm not entirely sure that that works. So if that had all gone away, would I have taught significantly different? In some ways much freer. I would never have done assessments the way institutions do. I mean, they're absurd. Most of that to me was absurd. So that, I think that one thing would have truly changed.
All right. Thank you so much, again, both of you. And now, folks who are also in the room with us, you are welcome to type things in the chat. You are welcome to unmute yourselves and ask questions. Go ahead.
And while everyone is sorting that out, I think, Genevieve, you're exactly right. The exhaustions from these behaviors is real. I mean, that is, it is, Julia, you made the choice that was best for you at that point, to walk away from it. And we were talking that the grass is always greener. I'm like, I often wonder how my life would be different if I made Julia's choice, if I just said, screw it. This is just not worth it for me. And so we were.
I guess my thing was, I've done enough. I did enough. 15 years, great. I've taught at other institutions. I felt like I had a really good understanding, and who knows? I might like to visit. I did something at the University of Buffalo in the autumn, which was great because I could come in and really focus on the things that I thought I could deliver the best. So maybe I'm just trying to take advantage of the institution, but not have to be of it.
Yeah. Good for you.
See,
the way you do that is that's how I did Berkland. Hi, Joe. Is I get to go in and I get to just teach and have fun and all of the other stuff Joanne deals with, and I'm very grateful for that because I get to go in and do what I love to do. And it's my favorite week or weeks of the year is to go in and teach in that particular environment. So I know what it's like because the magical ballet world that is Berkland Ballet, I get to go. But yeah, it's crazy. But Sharon has,
yeah.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say Sharon has a question, which I'll read for folks who are on devices that can't see chat. How much of your workday is spent on teaching, that's prep, teaching, working with students, and how much is spent on the exhausting bits?
I spend a lot of my summers prepping my courses so that when I get into the school year, I have enough time to deal with all of the administrative stuff. For those that don't know, university professors are 10-month professors, or at least at our institution, we're a 10-month employee. So we are technically off contract for the summer. So I don't get paid for my summer break. I wouldn't give it up for the world, mind you, but I don't get paid for it. And that's when but I would say it's at least 2-to-1 administrative to teaching, at least a 2-to-1 ratio. Just the work to keep the program going in an environment where you are not valued is really a lot.
I didn't ever have that much, but I had quite a lot. I was head of choreography. I just always felt like I took shortcuts everywhere because I got this feeling like nobody really was looking. Like, I do it, there's like, fill in all of these boxes. And so I filled them in. It wasn't like I'm not responsible. That's not the case, but to a certain extent, I thought, okay, this is a box I've got to tick. And people don't, I don't know, the people who are looking at it care about it a little bit. So I think I really pushed that stuff together, and I put most of my administrative energy in the projects. I did a lot of collaborative projects and other things that were teaching centered. So there was a lot of prep for me. But I also taught 4 classes, hour-long, back-to-back choreography classes for first years with a student population of 25 to 30 in each group. So I told
and that's considered fractional. That's the thing that blew my mind when you told me that is considered fractional or part-time.
I didn't.
That's
I told
crazy.
I mean, my thing was I didn't. So one of the things we talked about also was this management or administration kind of trying to make you feel like you've participated in making decisions that you haven't participated in. Yes, exactly. Yes.
Sorry, shared governance is a myth. Shared governance is a myth.
So,
It's top down.
Yeah, so the thing was that, if they make a decision, then I will try to figure out how to deal with that decision. But if you don't make a decision, or you make me make the decision, but then don't do anything that I suggested, you've wasted all of our time.
And that, I mean, we said that things would be COVID slanted, but not COVID centric. But I just want to say right now, things are bouncing up and down the ladder of responsibility, and the folks at the top say, you make the decision. And the folks down here say, no, you make the decision. And nothing is getting done. And the people who do have active information, no one's listening to them.
So then you're exhausted because you're waiting for somebody to make a decision about something. And
you have 14 different plans in place. Here's the plan where we're all online. Here's the plan where they let us be hybrid. Here's the plan where we can go more than hybrid. Here's the plan where they decide dance isn't valuable and I go work at Costco. Here's the plan. I mean, you have 16 different plans that you are, I mean, it is like somebody make a decision so something can land. By the way, Costco stock person, that's my if my program goes away, I'm going to work at Costco.
Other folks with questions?
I love that, Misha. I loved every minute of those classes. I got to go to London and see. I followed you for a day in London, and I followed you teaching your choreography classes. What was that beautiful church you were teaching in?
Trinity, yeah.
Oh, that was so gorgeous.
We ended up taking over that whole church. It was the only place though where I could really fit all of the students for choreography class in the same place. So I had to devise all these interesting strategies for how to like have things happen in groups. And but
Laban, did you have a question? I see you unmuting.
You asked me?
Yes.
Oh, no, I was just going to make a comment about the millions of plans that are in place, and would someone just make a decision? And having just made a very difficult decision recently, some of it, I mean, I feel for everyone who's waiting for someone to make that decision, but until the time comes, you sort of can't make that decision because things are changing so quickly that it's exhausting for the people trying to make the decisions also. And just, having to take everything into account. And as Fen said, people are pushing things up the ladder and then back down. When it comes right down to it, having to make that decision and carry that weight on your shoulders, it's one that you can only make in time.
But do you know, but I guess my next thought would be, are you were in a position to make the decision though, right?
Yes.
So at least you had that remedy to the horrible situation of having to make a decision. I guess as institutions get bigger and bigger, we don't know who has remedy, who can, I guess look at our government. Okay, there, I did it, I'm sorry.
Well, our district just Tuesday at the governing board meeting, that was when they made the announcement that only emergency medical services, nursing, and biology labs were going to be allowed on campus. Everything else was going to have to go to a remote. Now we are in a situation where, faculty doesn't have appropriate space to teach technique, and we actually had a pretty devastating, one of our faculty was pretty devastatingly injured, broke her pelvis in 2 places, trying to teach from her home. And so we're trying to get permission for her to be in the studio alone, actually, with a drummer, because it's Afro-Cuban and Brazilian, and maybe a demonstrator, because she is still healing from a broken pelvis. And they're turning her, we're fighting that battle right now to get her into the space safely, so that she doesn't have to teach from home. She doesn't have a safe home environment to teach in. So, and we're, I'm absolutely convinced that they're going to say no, at which point I'm calling Harlequin and ordering her a little sprung floor for her, and we'll figure something out. But wow, It was, I mean, that's even to have a single faculty in the space. They are still saying, yeah, no, not so much, only these things. Okay. But I was glad that the decision had been made. Now I can tell the students what they can expect for the semester because until that's made, I don't know how to tell the students what to expect. Sorry, that was a real bummer. It was a downer. Love the students.
I just did my first Zoom class today, actually. I took it. It was a Laban class, and I was completely unprepared. I flew off the computer to a work meeting. And I understand now what you're all up against, but I'm glad I haven't had to do it that much. And I, you know, and it did sound like, especially in the Corps de Ballet conference, the fatigue just from negotiating Zoom. Though I don't mind it so much, but I suppose if you guys were all students and I had to watch you and give you feedback, I don't know how that would be very good.
Well, we went from 0 to Zoom in a week. I mean, we went from what is this thing called Zoom, and I don't even know how to freaking log in, let alone negotiate as a teaching tool. And I think everyone was in the same boat. I think those people who bought stock in Zoom in January are wealthy people. But yeah, the learning curve for the technology was just insane.
Molly, how do institutional meetings run? Like, is there a hierarchy? Do they pin like the 3 leaders of the meeting in the window, or like, how does it work?
No, man, everybody gets to negotiate the way they want to, which is nice. I mean, it's much more egalitarian, I think, actually, because, you know, if you don't want to have your video up, you don't. And everyone is doing other work in meetings. Every single person has multiple windows open and is answering emails in the context of a meeting until they're called on to speak. So you're very efficient during meetings these days. So that's, but it is, yeah. So that's it. So there's no hierarchy. I mean, if you want the hierarchy, you put it on speaker view. If you are much more egalitarian, you're like, ooh, gallery view. Hello, everyone.
So
in gallery view, you get everyone's pets.
what?
In gallery view, you get to meet everybody's pets.
Yes, you do. And apparently that's supposed to be bad etiquette, Molly.
Everyone, this is Jack.
Hello.
Jack's my hip hugger, and he lives on my hip, and he's always there. So hi, everyone.
We're old friends.
You're being asked, Molly, how many people did you have in your classes? And Joanna's asking, do you see a way of combating the fatigue?
Actually, the how many people did it? Well, when I started, it was 35. By the end of the semester, it was certainly about 10. But so the attrition was real, and you know the fact that students are trying to take full online classes on their phones without adequate technology, and we all know the troubles that the students are facing right now, the housing insecurity, food insecurity, technology insecurity. To negotiate this. But frankly, the way I combat it, first of all, is exercise to the degree, but collaboration, which was Julia and I. She's been a lifeline through this because we had this Corps de Ballet conference and we had this coming up. So we were talking at least once a week, and that was, so I guess it's the outside stuff. It's the outside stuff because the institution will chew you up and spit you out and not care. And that took me way too many years to learn, that the institution did not have my best interest at heart, that they're interested that I was completely expendable. And that took a number of years and some instances of really kind of horrific I'm not going to share that, but there were some horrific things that happened that I'm like, oh, okay then.
Do you think everybody, administration and all, think they're expendable? I mean, is this like a shared sort of psychosis that we all have that we have to practice?
Administration will tell you that they are at-will employees. They are not tenured. Yes, but they can't make the decision to, kill their own job. So, but they're at-will employees, which means yearly contracts. So they do not. It's not a given that it will roll over like faculty and staff jobs, but it does.
Something else. Hang on. Oh yeah, we were back to the value of the degree. Oh yes. So so this all makes me go think about Black Mountain College. Black Mountain College, anybody? Anybody? I mean, Black Mountain College was this college formed in Asheville, North Carolina, with which a bunch of artists taught. And I'm not really sure how they funded it, but it was sort of this thing that emerged and evolved, but you didn't pay very much if you paid anything. And the faculty got a little something, but they also had a studio, and it was this very sort of, maybe it was very crunchy granola. But Cunningham and Cage came out of there, and Franz Klein, and Rauschenberg, and Jack Tworkoff, and Katie, oh, I forgot her last name. Anyway, and I just, the more we talk about institutions and the more I look at the COVID situation, I wonder if we've just been going in a direction that isn't that viable anyway. I don't know, maybe somebody else wants to comment on that.
I go back and forth on it. I'm in an open enrollment institution, and I ask myself all the time, what is the value of what it is I'm giving my students?
And the institutions I was in, they're taking more and more students now. They take, like, I don't know how many. I thought one year it was 250. This is an institution that shouldn't be taking more than 100. I don't know what it is. What is the thing then that you're delivering?
And
we told to raise applications, raise recruitment, raise the numbers we're taking into the program. It's become a metric. We were talking earlier about keeping your jobs. One of the metrics for keeping your jobs is, are you constantly taking more people?
So there can never be a status quo. There can never be a situation where things are going well and let's just be the way we are.
We had a situation where at Palomar College, and again, we're open enrollment, we have to have 20 people in a class. And if we don't have 20 people in a class, they will cut the class. We can make some justification for it. If it is only taught once every 2 years, because we're on a 2-year rotation, if it is a capstone class, but even those justifications sometimes don't work. Or if there's a handful of students that need it, or students that need it to graduate, and all of that. But without 20 people in a class, they find no value. But then you look at nursing, and nursing has an accrediting body that says there can only be 12 people in class. And so nursing is, and then we have an applied music program where it's single one-on-one instruction. And there's all these exceptions. And then you keep pointing to the exceptions going, but, and they're like, yes, for you, it's 20. It's like, oh,
yeah, and the
okay.
Music program, they do all these one-on-one sessions.
Yeah, the applied.
You don't have 5 trombonists in the room with one tutor. Maybe you do, but mostly not.
Yeah, it's crazy. I don't know, Joe, if I answered your question about. I think to combat the fatigue, you have to really have some clear boundaries, and I've had to learn time and time again that it's not personal, that there's so much that's beyond my control. I'm really strategic about the work that I do. I sit into committees. I think if the dance program is going to get cut, I want them to have to tell me in a meeting. They have to look me in the eye and say, we're cutting your program. And it becomes very personal because they know I'm associated with dance, so they have a name and a face to the program. So I'm very active, just so if that conversation has to happen, I want it to be as freaking uncomfortable as possible for as many people as possible.
So it's not personal. You're going to make it personal, though.
Hell yes. Yeah, I feel like I'm going to loom over them. What did you say? So it's compartmentalization, and it's stuff outside of the institution.
And then we're back to, if you get the students involved because they love their department, then now you're in a way you're burden sharing, you're politicizing, your relationship with the wider institution, which then leads to distrust, which.
Yeah, I mean, how many times have we, students, okay, if we've got the letter writing campaign to the board of directors, students, pony up, here's the situation. You pay into the system, they pay us, we have no value, but you pay into the system, you have all the value, so we need your voice to support this if this is something that you value.
Yeah, Genevieve just wrote, this is a good strategy, getting people to explain themselves and their decisions beyond managerial rhetoric. Yeah, that makes, yeah. You're talking about people who are making decisions for your institution or your department. Or, do we have to expect them to use anything other than managerial rhetoric? I mean,
it's so funny. I kind of flipped out on my dean yesterday in a meeting. By the way, I'm off contract. I just want you to know that I've been in meetings all morning, I've been in meetings all week, and I've been in meetings all month, and I am off contract. Why? Because I want my program to continue. Okay, so I'm done bitching about that. But our dean he takes all of this information and he doesn't let us know his process. And then he comes down with a decision, and the decision's a no. And I'm sorry, I'm older than he is. I'm way older than he is. So I just freaking put on my mom voice and I went, okay, you got to explain it. You've got it, and I kind of lost my stuff on him in the middle of a meeting, and I just said, you need to let us know, because this isn't working for us. Plus the fact he was our freaking technical director for the theater. Come on, he's one of us. We got him the freaking dean job. So every once in a while, I was his boss for a while, so I'll pull that card, and and I make him go beyond the managerial language. I'm like, do you value us or not? Of course I value you. Then tell us. Thank you. You've got a bunch of faculty that are so scared right now for their own jobs. Can you move beyond the yes and no answers and give us a little reassurance that you're still in our corner? And Julia and I, that was an emotional plea to my dean. And go ahead, Julia, take it away.
This is why Molly probably muscles through the institutional fatigue. And Julia goes, there are a lot of other things that I can be doing too. Maybe I'll just do them. Because I've always been used to sort of going around to get what I want. And Molly goes, I'm going to go straight forward and get it. And I have to say, I admire that, because I'm not sure I have the chutzpah to do quite what you do. But so hey, fight or flight.
Well, I had also been chair. So frankly, I come from a kind of that middle management. I know what that's like, that chair. First of all, chairs and departmental assistants, I can't imagine what you're going through right now. And I did a paper on leadership, and I interviewed Sharon for this paper on leadership, and she had some really wonderful strategies to getting things done with administrators that were steeped in this kind of managerial protocol and all of that. So Sharon, I don't know if you want to share with some of your strategies, but you were awesome. That interview was so great. We learn, I think as artists, we learn how to go around. We're always, someone's going to say, hey, no, and you're like, sorry, you said what? All I heard was you're making more work for me to get done what I need to get done. I never really heard a no there. I heard you're an obstructionist and you don't know what you're talking about, so I'm going to go forward. You're shaking your head, Julia. Wasn't it one of our first collaborations? I was coming at it from an emotional base, and we were doing learning styles, I think, the Howard Gardner work, and you were coming at it from the mathematical perspective, and I was coming from a very emotional intelligence kind of base, and you were like, freaking logic. Yeah,
but it's not always that useful. Case in point. Maybe it is useful. It's just that it's a different strategy. And I also wonder sometimes if, that was one of my big conflicts at the institution was, there are some people who were very emotional and they really needed to win and they really needed to be right about what they saw. Like my first question in the UK was, what is the standard? You keep talking about standards. So which dancer do you choose as your standard for the 100, for the A star? And nobody could ever tell me. But there was so much emotional baggage, I think, associated with the way faculty engage with students. I thought, it doesn't have to be emotional. Just how are they doing?
Julia, I remember you and I collaborated, and maybe you will remember this, on a blog post about emotional ownership.
Sorry, say it again.
Emotional ownership.
Yes.
And I think there's something here that's going on, that the administration are attempting to take emotional ownership of the faculty.
Interesting.
Ooh.
And that if emotional ownership faculty to student is the faculty knows how the student feels better than the student does. The administration know better than the faculty how the faculty feel and what the faculty want.
There could be some of that, for sure. I mean, and the thing is, it can come in so many different ways. There may also be administration may also be taking care of the people above them, taking care of, like taking emotional ownership of their, see emotions.
And on that note,
Maybe that's where we end.
I feel good about that. But what I will do is, thank you all so much for coming and your questions. And again, Molly and Julia, thank you for our time. The way I usually wrap this up is I turn off the camera, I let everybody read out, maybe swap some email addresses, network for a while, just so that we can defragment. So unless everyone wave at me if you have a final question or thing you need to add. All right, in which case, thank you again, and I'm going to turn. Oh, I would just like to say, since Molly did talk about collaboration, next week we have undergrads. The week after that, we have a talk on collaboration. We have a digital film artist, Rebecca Salza, a musician, Amir Zaheri, and they are both going to talk about collaborating over distance and during a pandemic. So please, if you're here for the first time, come back and join us again. All right.